Everyday Life with Guardsmares, Chapter 22. Lily Glamerspear's point of view. So help her Celestia, if that blood-sucking abomination placed even one hoof wrong, Specialist Glamerspear was going to do to her what she did to Valiant Coulthard 2 days ago. Even if she was mana burned so hard that the effort made her vomit, gave her seizures, and put her into a coma, it would be worth it to reduce her to a fine puree. Or ash. Did bat ponies turn ash when they were killed? She'd soon be finding out. Gritting her teeth, Lily wished that she could have her shield up and a magazine of telekinetic spears ready to fly, but Lieutenant Violetta was walking with them, and she'd expected Lily to play nice with the beast.
Friends with a mutant creature of the night, yeah, right.
And Sergeant Ebonshield was just walking casually alongside them, as if she had every right to parade her filth around Candelot Palace. Well, she was about to get a rude awakening. If Anonymous's ability to serve her as her spotter during the duel with Killfeather was any indication, the Royal Engineer of Equestria had a keen eye. He'd pierce through that civilized facade that she wore and see the beast within. Then she'd be kicked out of the Quaternion, and straight into a dungeon cell. Secure in the knowledge that that foul creature beside her would be banished in short order, Lily's angered stare mollified into more of a smug eyeballing. Reaching the Royal Engineer's chamber door, Temper Violetta paused for a moment to make sure Lily and the Sergeant were still with her, then reached up and knocked. "Come in!" Pushing the door open, the Lieutenant didn't instruct the Bat Pony to wait outside this time.
Good morning, sir. I'm here with a delivery of sorts.
Oh, good morning, Lieutenant Violetta. Focused on the Sergeant, Lily only barely registered that Anonymous was sitting in one of the club chairs, reading the newspaper while facing the door. She barely even looked in his direction as she gave a salute and took a position beside the door.
Specialist Glamerspear reporting for duty, sir.
Anonymous nodded in her direction. Good morning, Specialist. Sergeant Ebonshield walked in past her.
Perfect, her back's exposed.
Lily made sure to position herself so as to keep Anonymous out of the line of fire, but Lieutenant Violetta walked behind Ebonshield, meaning that if her fire was overpenetrated, she could get hit.
She's wearing armor.
If Lily had to frag Ebonshield with Violetta standing there, she should be fine.
Sir, in response to your request yesterday for a full Quaternion escort, I have the pleasure to inform you that your request has been granted.
Anonymous folded the paper under his arm and got to his feet. Really? Goodness, that was quick, Lieutenant. Putting one hoof to her chest, Temper Violetta took the undeserved compliment with pompous dignity.
Well, sir, in the Royal Guard, we do aim for efficiency and efficacy.
Lily internally eye-rolled. Yeah, she wasn't so worried about accidentally hitting the lieutenant now.
And allow me to introduce the fourth member of your retinue, Sergeant First Class Ebonshield, a Bat Pony of the Equestrian Night Guard.
The target of Lily's rage and her nearly summoned telekinetic projectile stepped up to her VIP, and didn't even give him the honor of a bow.
So she's not just rude to fellow soldiers. Great Lord, from the deepest shadow to the brightest star, by your will alone I set my blood in motion. An oath sworn on blood. Well, that just fucking seals the deal, doesn't it?
Perhaps delaying his inevitable dismissal of that vile fiend in order to learn more about her, Anonymous merely gave a nod of acknowledgments. Please excuse my ignorance, Sergeant, but I don't believe I've met any ponies of your kind before.
Yeah, and after we get rid of this one, you'll hopefully won't see any of them again. Secret Lord, that is doubtless because there are only a few hundred of us here in Canterlot. We generally keep our rookery under the mountain, at least during the day.
Lily wanted to gasp, but was stifled by blind rage.
A nest of vampires right here in Canterlot?
Oh, she was gonna need every anti-air unicorn from her old battery in order to clean them out. With a slight smile on his face, Anonymous looked expectantly over at Lieutenant Violetta. I see. Well, Lieutenant?
Sir?
Lily's commanding officer just looked confused, which seemed to disappoint the Royal Engineer. Lily's commanding officer just looked confused, which seemed to disappoint the Royal Engineer. Don't you have something interesting to say about the Sergeant's past service, as you did with the others? The Lieutenant licked her lips uncomfortably.
I'm afraid not, sir. Unfortunately, I received only a very thin file about Sergeant Ebonshield. No doubt in the haste to fill that position. Her previous commanding officer in the Night Guard accidentally misplaced some of her paperwork.
Before she could go on, the Bat Pony scum interrupted her.
I doubt that, Lieutenant. We did not keep the paperwork of that kind. However, it was determined that 18B Specialist Weapons Sergeant and Sergeant First Class were the closest equivalent Royal Guard service identifier and rank for my position in the Night Guard.
Turning to the Royal Engineer, she concluded.
Great Lord, I apologize profoundly for the failure to supply your Mayor Domo with that information, rendering her unable to properly introduce your newest servant.
With her accents, Major Domo sounded more like Mayor Domo, but that's not really what stuck Glamerspear the most. The revelation that the Night Guard didn't use standard service identifiers or ranks, and worse, didn't keep well-regimented files on their soldiers seemed to shock the lieutenant to her core, and she just stood there dumbfounded. Lily had never seen her so off balance, but Anonymous still wore an amiable smile. Well, perhaps you could simply introduce yourself, Sergeant. I'm curious as to the name of your position in the Night Guard. It seemed that he was going to draw this one out all the way.
Come on, let's just get to the Bat Pony slaying already. Great lord, I have the unparalleled honor of entering your service as the 7th rank of the School of the Shining Star Dance, or Stella 7 for short. Well, talk about an over-embellished title.
It sounded like the kind of thing a pony dreamed up when they wanted to say that they've been studying war since the day that they were born. Lily could just picture Ebenshield monologuing before their fight.
While you were still suckling at your mother's teat, I studied the blade. While you were learning pathetic unicorn magic, I mastered flight. While you were courting salt licks, I cultivated inner strength. Yada yada.
The sense of smug emanating from her Stellar 7 title just had Lily aching even harder to shove a dozen telekinetic spears into her neck. On the other hoof, it looked like the Royal Engineer was keeping his cool. That's a very impressive sounding title, Sergeant. Out of curiosity, how many ranks are there in that school?
There are 7, great lord, as in all such schools. Only the master, Darkson, sits above the ranks as the 8th.
Indeed. Well, it sounds like we could have used your help earlier on Sunday.
No, wait, he's not just keeping us cool, he's slowly playing her. Pumping her for all the information about bat ponies that the Royal Guard would need to wipe them out. All of them. Clever.
Anonymous turned to face Lily. And speaking of Sunday, by the way, Specialist, our friend Lieutenant Killfeather has made today's papers. Amplified by her thirst for battle, she grinned heartily.
Oh, really, sir? I imagine it's an interview from the Camelot Hospital Intensive Cuddle Unit?
I'm afraid not. Apparently, after you, the Corporal, and Specialist Sparkshower brushed aside their pate sabot at New Stirrup Bridge, the 1st Camelot Air Superiority Wing took it upon themselves to set up downriver at Old Stirrup Bridge instead. Forgetting her rage at the abomination standing before her, Lily's thoughts turned to the bastard from 2 days ago, and her blood instantly boiled over.
What?
Lieutenant Violetta shot her a horrified glare from her uncivilized outburst, but her lapse in manners didn't seem to faze the Royal Engineer at all. He merely unfolded the paper as he held it up to read. Oh yeah, it's all here in this article. It read, Heroic Lieutenant binds wings and removes armor to level playing field in pate sabot of Old Stirrup Bridge. Apparently he's passing off his injuries and missing armor as chivalric charity. Brushing aside the Tartarian sergeant, Lily marched up to her VIP, who gladly handed the paper into her waiting telekinetic embrace. As she scanned the article, growing more furious by the word, Lieutenant Violetta turned to Anonymous.
Pate sabot, sir? There hasn't been one of those in over 100 years.
137 years, according to Lieutenant Killfeather, but I assure you he did set up at New Stirrup Bridge in Augustus on Sunday morning. I might have not minded, except that he demanded Specialist Sparkshower in hostage as his price for crossing the bridge.
A hostage?
In her surprise, Lieutenant Violetta's wings began to spread before she recomposed herself, folding them back in tight.
That's unbelievable, sir. The 1st Camelot Air Superiority Wing is one of the most decorated units in the Royal Guard.
I assure you, that's completely true. Answering the challenge to me, Corporal Bound proposed 3 individual duels, and I'm proud to say that your soldiers carried the day. In fact, despite their use of an MXP Games totem to keep their fighting safe, the lieutenant was rather savagely thrashed by Specialist Glamerspear. Keeping it enveloped in her telekinetic aura, Lily folded the newspaper and moved it out of the way.
You can say that again, sir. I even took the mangled helmet off of his shattered corpse as a trophy.
She turned to her superior.
Lieutenant, ma'am, you can't just let them get away with this. As if demanding Sparkshower as a hostage wasn't bad enough. Even if they got approval for a pate sabot in New Stirrup Bridge, there's no way they got approval to just pack up and move downriver if they just happen to get beaten.
Her commanding officer, still uncertain about this whole situation, looked uncomfortable with the prospect of investigating this matter.
Well, she'd better suck it up, or else Lord Anonymous will know how to cause a real scandal. I'll have to bring this up with the captain, I suppose, and then it'll have to go up from there to whoever authorized it. According to Killfeather himself, it was Major General Hoofstrong.
That was another shock to her. Major General Georgia Hoofstrong commanded the entire 1st Air Division, which had squadrons covering the central region of Equestria, Cloudsdale, Canterlot, Ponyville, and the rest. Over 10,000 Pegasus soldiers served under her in the defense of Ponykind. The lieutenant balked at the idea of confronting one of the nation's most distinguished commanders.
The Major General authorized it? Digging into this could take some doing, then.
The Royal Engineer gave a slight shrug. Well, there's no rush, Lieutenant. Perhaps it doesn't even really matter, but based on his ongoing successes at Old Stirrup Bridge, I'm sure you'll find that there will shortly be a number of Errant noble ponies who will be very eager to hear that they were the subject of an unauthorized tasselitude.
Right, the nobles.
Lieutenant Violetta went pale when she realized that punishing Lieutenant Killfeather may involve humbling the royal guard before the land gentry of Equestria. Icepone deserved every inch of punishment that could come to him, but Lily had to admit that she didn't want to see the guard's reputation tarnished just to satisfy a bunch of wealthy idle noble ponies.
Ugh, House played his cards well with this one.
Lily retired back to her firing position by the doorway.
I'll look into it, sir, with due caution.
As I said, Lieutenant, there's no hurry. In the meantime, you have my thanks for swiftly filling out the ranks of my escort so that I don't make any more social gaffes. The Royal Engineer turned to Lily with a smile on his face. And speaking of social gaffes, Specialist Glamerspear, I've received word that my new athletic ensembles are ready to pick up from the tailors this morning.
So they did take my advice. Nice. Now it's time to address the blood-sucking, bat-winged, undead elephant in the room.
Lieutenant Temper Violetta piped up.
Well, sir, if you have no need for the sergeant or myself at the moment, then we shall take our leave.
Certainly, Lieutenant. Thank you for the introduction. I look forward to receiving your service, Sergeant.
What? No bat pony slaying?
As Violetta and Ebonshield made for the door, Anonymous suddenly interrupted them. Oh, actually, there was one thing.
Yes?
They turned away from her to face the Royal Engineer once more, and Lily warmed up a special delivery for Sergeant Ebonshield. I wonder if you happen to be free this morning, Sergeant. Perhaps you'd care to tag along as a second escort and give me a second opinion on my new Kotor?
What the buck?
Lily didn't seem to expect that one, but I think she had her hopes up a bit too high. Just a hunch. Now let's get on to our skilled donators. Top donators: Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Gauntlet, and only one thing. TacoCat598, Zar630, Strix, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Austin Roland, CrazyKiller557, Stu Hex, Will, James Burner, Dosbell, Delta Omega, Jack Edge, RuneScyther9852, Madman Stan, Leslie Perkett, Hunter Norman, Stephen Bingham, LineGuy12, and many more wonderful people. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and live life to the fullest.